Welcome to Osher at Dartmouth's 30th anniversary celebration. Although we are not able to gather in person to celebrate our anniversary, we'd like to take this opportunity to commemorate 30 years of phenomenal growth. The people you will meet exemplify the Osher at Dartmouth commitment to lifelong education and continued personal growth. We hope you enjoy our presentation.
Hello, I'm Ginia Allison, and I'd like to take you back now 30 years to a day when my husband and Huntley and I were leaving Hopkins Center through the back entrance, and in that parking lot we ran into Steve Calvert, who was then an English professor and director of continuing education and conferences at Dartmouth. Steve had an idea for a permanent year-round program at Dartmouth for retirement age and younger folks. He'd been a professor and also the dean of this continuing education program, and at the conference, other deans and directors advised Steve to explore such a program here. At that time, there were 160 other colleges who had such a program, and thus Iliad was born, although it didn't have a name. Well, a founders group was formed, and they met all fall, and then they established, they thought, the beginning of a program for piloting this adventuresome idea. 5 study groups were planned, and you'll be entertained at the courses that they were. For example, healthcare in the United States, Great Decisions, Homer's Odyssey, Hawthorne's Scarlet Letter, and Myths. In April, an official charter was dedicated, and Dartmouth, quote, gave recognition to Iliad as a program of Dartmouth College under the office of the provost. That following fall, we made national news when U.S. News and World Report published an article from which I quote, "The map says Hanover, but a wag might call this hamlet Dartmouth, since the local Ivy League college has an overwhelming influence on quality of life. Locals can audit classes, and the new Institute for Lifelong Education offers courses in more than a dozen disciplines, from history to science fiction." Well, that was pretty exciting. Things went along, study groups were formed, and extraordinary leaders were recruited. At the end of 20 years of amazing progress, we had an anniversary and a small group developed a little ditty to sing on that occasion. It was done to Gilbert and Sullivan's "I Am the Very Model of a Modern Major General," and it went like this. When I was asked to teach a course, I answered with mythology. While others viewed the moon and stars and even tried astrology, yes, healthcare, Shakespeare, mushrooms, walls, and even some geology, we'd Ichabana picking wines, all served without apology. And it ended with these words, I know a little about a lot, I'm quite replete with knowledge. Though I have aged, I'm wiser now than ever when in college. Some 40 courses I have had, that's why I feel fulfilled. We know we're hip and smarter now because we've been in Iliad. Still more happened during the following years, and probably most exciting of all was our affiliation with Osher, which not only gave us some wonderful new funding possibilities, but also a new name. So, at this current time, I'm now going to present you with this updated little ditty. Now, I'm a happy student of some courses done by Osher. Our students come from far-flung spots, but some live even closer. Our leaders have amazing skills. They're all replete with knowledge. Some hone their skills on younger folk, like the ones at Dartmouth College. Business schools and science labs and diplomatic posts, medical tours and medical terms and culinary roasts. Review artistic provenance in Hood Museum galleries, then virtually dine on sumptuous feasts or learn to restrict our calories. We older folk have learned a lot. Our Zooming skills incredible. We're sage, we're wise. If truth be known, we truly are remarkable. No subject's been too rare for Osher's own curriculum. For 30 years, we've studied lots from sublime to ridiculum. So, at this juncture, I'd like to propose a little toast to our past with Iliad, our present with Osher, and the next 30 years. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Barbara Jones, member of Osher, and I'm here to celebrate the 30th anniversary of Osher at Dartmouth, initially called Iliad for the Institute for Lifelong Education at Dartmouth. You probably have already heard from one of the essential founders, Ginya Allison. Another founder was Wilmot bin Lewis, publisher of the Valley News, and he was enlisted by Tom and Nardi Campion to join the effort. My job is to tell you a bit about the person for whom the Campion Award for Exemplary Service is named. I can scarcely think of two more intriguing people to have landed in our midst than Tom and Nardi Campion. Bin loved to tell the story that a day or two after he became the publisher of the Valley News, his secretary buzzed him to say there was someone he knew on the phone. Since Bin had only recently arrived, he could not believe that he knew anyone in the Upper Valley. When he picked up, the voice said, Wilmot Lewis of the Washington Star, this is Thomas Campion of the New York Times. Welcome to the Upper Valley. Tom was one of the prime movers in getting Iliad started, and Tom enlisted Bin and many others who immediately saw its potential. Bin was also instrumental in encouraging Nardi to write her newspaper column, Everyday Matters. If you had the good fortune to be invited to the Campion home for dinner, you might find guests like Harrison Salisbury, just returned from his personal experiences in Tiananmen Square. And you never knew when you might appear in Nardi's newspaper column as you watched her jot notes on a napkin as we sat talking over dinner. Tom was such a catalyst and a teacher for Osher. And while he was not the sole creator, he, and I contend his wife Nardi, were a natural choice for the name of an award for stellar service to Osher at Dartmouth. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Patricia Norton. I've been facilitating courses with Iliad/Osher since 2001. I've done courses in poetry, literature, creativity, music, the link between poetry and music, settings of poems in music, various things. It's always been such a treat to work with people who are curious and kind and perceptive and funny and rigorous. I've learned so much from every time I've had an opportunity to teach an Osher course. And usually I've done courses in things that I didn't know as much about as I wanted to know, and I was curious, and this was an excuse for me to really pursue what I wanted to do. And I have so enjoyed the work and the people that I've met through Osher. The song I want to share for you today is one that I wrote in 2015. It's called Falling Into Now, and it feels a little bit like what we're doing at this time, this consistent falling forward into where we are. Thank you, and thank you for all the pleasure that I and others get from Osher.
My name is Hank Biermeyer. I have been an Osher member and an Iliad member for approximately 23 years. My portion of the presentation will be to share with you my remarks in a booklet I wrote in 2010 entitled The History of Iliad, the First 20 Years. And I would like to also share with you a number of the photographs. First of all, I would like to quote from a letter that we received from then President Jim Young Kim, congratulating us on our first 20 years when we were then known as Iliad. You have much to celebrate. From 38 founding members in November of 1990 and a pilot program of 5 courses in the spring of 1991, you have grown to more than 1,450 members. Altogether, over the years, more than 25,000 members have taken more than 1,500 courses. This remarkable goal is a great testament to the vision and hard work of the founders and the officers who have succeeded them in guiding Iliad. The message of Iliad is that we live and we learn, and the two are indivisible. May that message be heard well into the future. So let's start off with the founding. During the fall of 1990, the founders of the Institute for Lifelong Education at Dartmouth began to envision a new permanent non-credit continuing education program on the Dartmouth College campus. Iliad was established to be sponsored by the Dartmouth and linked to the college through its Department of Continuing Education and Conferences. While many members might have Dartmouth connections, the Institute's goal was that for many other neighbors, Iliad would become their own Dartmouth connection. The spark plug was Steve Calvert. He was definitely the spark plug that brought Iliad into existence. In 1989, Steve submitted a written proposal to John Strobenheim, then Dartmouth's provost, quote, to open the Dartmouth community for lifelong learning. Calvert explained how an Iliad-type program would benefit its members, the college, and the community. Specifically, he said members would benefit from its intellectual needs, access to other college activities, and the facilities of Baker Library. Dartmouth would benefit from the enrichment of the campus, academic and social environment by highly educated, motivated adult learners and a devoted audience for public lectures and events. It was a win-win situation. It started out with some founders visiting Harvard's Institute for Learning and Retirement program, but they didn't really have many nice words to say about that. The program consisted of about 400 people. It was limited to a maximum of 400 people. And as a result, some people that applied for admission were routinely not allowed to join. And that's not what the founders had in mind. They decided that there should be no restrictions. And that's the way Iliad was conceived. We had an opportunity for some of the founders to run what was known as a pilot program of various courses, one of which was a course called Myth, left by Ginia Allison. And she's still with us, folks. Thank goodness for that. And very active in Osher. A reception opening Iliad's first full year was held at the River City Arts Council Theater, which we now know as the Briggs Opera House, in White River Junction. John Kemeny, President Emeritus of Dartmouth College at the time, and a longtime friend of continuing education, gave the principal address. According to the Valley News the following day, John G. Kemeny, President Emeritus of Dartmouth College, said, keeping one's mind limber and strong is the key to a rewarding life. He was preaching to the converted They listened attentively as he linked his academic career to a series of courses and supplementing those he took to earn his doctorate in mathematics from Princeton University. Lifelong learning is absolutely essential for a meaningful life. Our first home was what is known as Parker House on Dartmouth's campus. At the time, it was hoped that way off into the future, Iliad might reach a membership, are you ready for this, of 200 people. All expectations were soon exceeded. In 1993, the membership had grown to 585, and by 1997, it was almost 900. When I wrote this book in 2010, for the past 3 years, the membership had leveled off at approximately 1,445 people. Our study leaders are the heart and soul of Iliad. That is a quotation from our former president, Ann Hargraves, describing how important it is that our organization have qualified, well-motivated, and just great study leaders. And many of the course titles were intriguing. My mentor, Joe Medicott, told me one time, and a lot of other people too, when he made presentations to future study leaders, that you have to have a seductive course title. You gotta really work on no more than 6 words and have it seductive. So some of my favorite courses were How to Go to Hell, Poisonings and Other Things, Murder by Poison, A Dying Art. And that's one of my favorite photographs in the book. And a course called American Submarine Espionage. I'll talk about baiting the hook. We have had some wonderful annual meetings. And one of the highlights of every annual meeting has been a presentation by a distinguished guest speaker. Iliad was honored to have the New York Times foreign correspondent and distinguished author, Harrison Salisbury, speak at its first annual meeting in November of 1991. Salisbury's topic was, quote, Russia, democracy or disaster? The following year, guest speaker was C. Everett Koop, MD, senior scholar of the C. Everett Koop Institute at Dartmouth College. And he spoke on, quote, guiding the revolution in medical education. These 2 guests provided a benchmark for future speakers. In 2002, the Thomas B. Campion Award came into existence, and the first of these awards was presented during Iliad's annual meeting in 2002. Nardi Reeder, Campion, Tom's widow, was presented an honorary award in memory of her husband's, Iliad's primary founder and first president. All subsequent awards have been inscribed for exceptional service. We have had a history of having special lecture opportunities where anybody can come from the community. They don't have to be a member of Osher, but that's also how we get members, because they come to the special lecture series or a special opportunity on campus and they see what's going on. They say, count me in. Jerry Danielle, a retired Dartmouth College history professor, began lecturing on the history of New Hampshire in 2003, the year of his retirement. One of the most successful special lecture opportunities in Iliad's history occurred in 2010 when Dartmouth President Jim Young Kim presented a special lecture to Iliad members in a nearly packed Spalding Auditorium, which by the way holds 900 people, on, quote, why we can't wait, building a science of healthcare delivery. Near the end of my booklet, I talk about the future. What is the future of Iliad? Because we now know the roots and we know the history up until 2010. But what's the future? Has it outgrown its current home? What is the current status of Iliad's long-range planning? When will it have its own home, its own campus, its own parking lot, its own administrative office, technically, quote, smart classrooms, and perhaps a lounge? a library, classroom computers, music and art rooms. How about an auditorium? Lastly, I'd like to make a comment about what we know as the front office. Without question, the individual most responsible for the smooth running of Iliad, and now Osher, over the years, has been our one and only Lisa King. Whether helping a study leader with a projector, answering the phone and email inquiries from members about courses, scheduling special lectures, putting together course catalogs, or answering questions from the general public about Iliad's offerings, Lisa has done everything to perfection. Now, Lisa has had plenty of additional staff over all these years, and they have all been absolutely magnificent, especially, of course, our current administrative staff. Thank you all. Lisa was interviewed and hired in early 1985 by then President Mid Davidson. Quote, "We met and it was almost magical from that moment," she said. 15 years later and I'm still here. Well, multiply that times 2 and more. Iliad had 676 members when I arrived. Today, as of 2010, we have an energetic, mindful membership of 1,450 members. Iliad has grown by leaps and bounds, and so have I as an individual. I am so proud to be a part of this amazing volunteer organization with many wonderful people. Thank you very much for allowing me to participate. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thoroughly enjoyed being in the company of Osher members. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Joe Medlicott. I've been with Iliad since Iliad-Osher for a long, long time. When I retired some years ago, I got a call from my dear friend, Ginya Allison, and she said the college was starting an adult education program and wondered if I'd be interested. Well, I'd been retired for 2 or 3 days and was getting itchy and wanted something to do. So that began my career with this wonderful program. I've enjoyed every minute of it. I teach over the years. I've taught 40 or 50 or 60 or 70 courses. I don't keep track. But since the very beginning, after the second round of classes began, I started teaching courses in literature, everything from Beowulf to Virginia Woolf, with an occasional stop at Milton and Chaucer and Shakespeare, and also the Romantic poets, Keats and Shelley, and then the great Victorian novelists, Dickens, Thackeray, Reed, and Collins, and a quantum leap into American classics. Emily Dickinson, my favorite poet, Edith Wharton, Willa Cather, Thoreau, Emerson, Mark Twain, Faulkner, Fitzgerald, Hemingway, the entire gamut. I love what I do. I really enjoy it. It keeps my little gray cells from turning to mush. And now in my mid-90s, I have to be careful about things like that. At any rate, I love what I do, and for lots of reasons, not the least of which is, as I just mentioned, I'm a great fan of the life of the mind. And certainly there's no better way to keep the mind active and avoiding the mush than teaching, preparing new courses. The second reason is a very important one too. It's the very fact that over the long, long years that I've taught in this program and relished every moment of it, I've met the most wonderful collection of people. The woods are filled with marvelous men and women who are challenging and well-read and thoughtful and humorous. I've enjoyed it very much, particularly in the course I teach and have for about the last 30 years, a course in writing memoirs. And there again, I have found that that is a area where I have met such wonderful people. In all candor, I can tell you that my dearest friends are those I've met as my students in these wonderful classes. So that's my story. I will continue to teach until someone of higher authority than I am will sidle up to me someday and say, "Joe, I think it's time to quit. You're not making much sense anymore. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hi, this is Charlie Buell. It was Beth Griffiths who got me involved in Iliad in 1993. She had introduced me to my future wife, Sybil, so I felt I owed her something in return. So when she asked me to lead a course, I said, sure. I was a mere 53 years old, by far the youngest person in the classroom, facing retirees who were well-educated and were my father's generation. Tom Campion was one of them. I did choose to give the course on one of my favorite books, Jane Jacobs' The Death and Life of Great American Cities. So I had some optimism that I could pull it off. I did pretty much, but with very helpful additions from the experienced course attendees. I then had a 10-year hiatus for my full-time job, but with real retirement, I came back not only with Jane Jacobs, but with Karen Armstrong on fundamentalism, David Hackett Fisher and Colin Woodard on American society, and courses on the Puritans, U.S. immigration, New York City and Boston, and most recently, international populism. I had a lot of prep work, but that was also fun. I also gave back by joining the curriculum committee, working with others to beat the bushes to get other course leaders. I even stretched my very modest administrative abilities by leading the committee while the office was fully computerizing the catalog. That was more of a chore than I had anticipated. I did manage to construct a rough flow of information and vetting, which my successors greatly smoothed out. I needed a year off after that. While I've had other activities in retirement, volunteering with Iliad Osher has been the cornerstone of this retirement, and I hope to continue for as long as my wits are about me. Thank you.
I've been an Osher member since 1995. I began writing poetry in study leader Mame Willie's course, Reading and Writing Poetry. Over the years, Mame led more than 30 courses. When I began taking additional Osher literature and writing courses, I learned there were many Osher members who were also writing and publishing. In 2010, I organized Osher's first annual literary evening to give those members an opportunity to present their work in a social and celebratory atmosphere. There have been approximately 58 poets and authors who have presented over these past 10 years. For the 25th anniversary of Osher at Dartmouth, I compiled and edited an Osher at Dartmouth anthology of poets and writers. Here's a poem from that anthology by Mame Willie. Full Moon. I see it coming up behind the empty trees, orange like a harvest moon, but this is only March. An hour from now, it will be free of the trees and it will be its usual ordinary white. Can't I stop it now when it's tangled in trees and still orange? Stop it for some unspecified pause before it continues on its night's long march to disappearing?
Hi, Sylvia Sands Paxton here to help celebrate our 30th anniversary. And before I begin the saga of how Iliad became Osher at Dartmouth, I want to acknowledge help given to me by Lisa King, Pete Blyler, Terry Martin, Ian Sim, and Wikipedia. In 2009, when Anne Hargrave was Iliad president and Pete Blyler was vice president, The Bernard Osher Foundation contacted Dartmouth saying they were interested in funding a lifelong learning program at Dartmouth, wanting our Ivy League college to become the 118th program in its portfolio. Then Dartmouth President Jim Kim invited Ann and Pete to a meeting to discuss the offer. Iliad was in the midst of a strategic planning process at the time, and Ann and Pete asked the Osher Foundation to wait for a response until our strategic plan was complete. The Osher Foundation agreed. Now a little information on Bernard Osher and his foundation. Bernard Osher was born in 1927 in Biddeford, Maine, and graduated from Bowdoin in 1948. He owned property in Maine, worked for Oppenheimer and Company, an investment bank and real estate brokerage firm in New York City, before moving to California in 1963, where he became a founding director of a small savings and loan association, which became World Savings, at one time the second largest saving institution in the United States. In 1977, Bernard and his wife Mary created the Bernard Osher Foundation to improve the quality of life through support for education and the arts. The foundation supports scholarships at more than 250 colleges, conservatories, and universities around the country. The foundation also supports integrative medicine programs at 7 universities. The Osher Lifelong Learning Institute's program supports non-credit courses and activities for seasoned adults age 50 or over who are interested in learning for the joy of learning. Now at 124 colleges and universities from Maine to Hawaii and Alaska. In 2006, Forbes listed Osher as the 746th richest man in the world. And in November 26, 2007, an issue of Business Week listed him as the 11th most generous philanthropist. In 2011, the strategic plan was completed and Bernard Osher Foundation reached out to Dartmouth again. Then President Pete Blyler put the question before Leadership Council. With much spirited and sometimes heated discussion, the Leadership Council voted to investigate the offer. Bruce McDonald said at the meeting, quote, "Let's at least kick the tires," unquote. Pete and Bruce had a phone conversation with the Osher Foundation to learn more. The proposal made to Dartmouth College and to Iliad was that the Bernard Osher Foundation would make a $100,000 gift to the college to be used to enhance services of Iliad. Because Iliad was part of Dartmouth but completely run by volunteers, it was up to the Leadership Council to decide whether to proceed. There were some strings attached, but not many. One was that we would change the name of our program from Iliad to the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute at Dartmouth. The endowment cannot be used for capital purposes such as a new building, and we submit an annual report to the foundation. The Osher Foundation does not interfere with how we run our program. We had 1 year to demonstrate to the foundation that we were financially responsible. If the foundation approved of our spending, the college would receive $1 million for the endowment. Once the name change was complete, the college would receive a second $1 million donation. The terms of the $2 million endowment provide for a predetermined amount of the annual distribution to be spent in support of our lifelong learning program. The remainder is plowed back into the endowment to grow the capital for future years. Leadership Council understood that changing the name of Iliad would be very controversial and balanced that against the need for financial stability and not raising costs to our members, many of whom are living on fixed incomes. The Leadership Council voted to move forward. Iliad spent a third of the initial $1 million to fund the honoraria, travel costs, and advertising for the summer lecture series. Some was allocated to the creation of an online registration system for membership and classes. Study leader training, renting additional classroom space, and hiring temporary staff to satisfy the demands of a growing membership were made possible with the initial money. We met the requirements of the gift and were awarded the first $1 million in January of 2014 and the second of June in that year. Stu Wood, president, announced to the membership that Iliad had become Osher Lifelong Learning Institute at Dartmouth in May of 2014. Let us be clear. The Osher Foundation endowment was given to Dartmouth College for our benefit. The funds are overseen by an in-house group of investment experts utilizing many investment firms. The endowment fund has grown 21% to $2.4 million since 2014, all the while providing slightly more than $100,000 distribution at the end of the year for our benefit. This last year, Osher at Dartmouth took $119,041 in distribution from the fund, which was 36% of our COVID-restricted budget of just over $356,000, a real lifesaver in this challenging economic time. In normal times, the predetermined income from the Osher endowment has supported 22% of our approximately $500,000 budget. As a result of Leadership Council making the bold change from Iliad to Osher at Dartmouth, we have been able to contain fees for membership, raising them only once in the last 13 years. We have adjusted to the changes required by the COVID pandemic and developed an online program which permits us to access speakers from all over the world. We now offer courses to students anywhere there is internet, thereby being accessible to those unable to attend classes in person. This fall, we had students in states far beyond New England and in countries as far away as France and the United Arab Emirates. Signing on to become Osher at Dartmouth was a gutsy change, but one that has benefited our institute enormously and will continue to do so in future. Here's a toast with my tea to another 30 wonderful years. Thank you very much.
In early 2014, we were transitioning to a smaller home, and I was stepping down from a few board positions and a 10-year stint as president of the board of our community association. I realized that I needed to find something to fill my time, a new occupation. Osher was going through its own transition from Iliad at that point, when I learned of an offering entitled How to Teach an Osher Course. I enrolled and was lucky enough to find a wonderful mentor in Hank Burmeyer, who taught that program. The next semester, I offered my first course, and I've led more than 15 different courses in the ensuing years. The camaraderie, enthusiasm, active exchange of views contribute mightily for me to the challenge and excitement of these courses. A suggestion from then Osher President Sylvia Paxton led to my accepting a position on the Leadership Council. And working with this group has given me an added appreciation for what's involved in working with organizations in the Upper Valley and, of course, in the Dartmouth College community. Several years ago, I was at a dinner party in San Francisco and chatting with somebody in that city who taught in a similar program. At one point, he said to me, "Do you mind if I ask you how much you get paid for this work?" And I said, "We don't get paid anything. We're all volunteers." And he responded, "I would never spend all this time preparing and teaching these courses if I didn't get paid." And to me, that says it all. For 30 years, the volunteers of Osher have prepared hundreds of programs to enrich the lives of thousands of participants. I hope to be able to share my enthusiasm for my programs with my students for many years to come. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Pete Blyler, and I'm going to talk to you about the Summer Lecture Series. The Summer Lecture Series was the inspiration of David Bisnow, and he started it in 1997 along with a committee. The format then, and it continues to be the same today, is that there's a series of presentations over 6, 7, or 8 weeks during July and August. Each year, there is a specific focus or theme. For example, in 1999, the theme was dilemmas we can expect to face in the 21st century. I don't know how many of them we've now faced, but I'm sure there have been many. David ran the program for 8 years and stepped down in 2004 and turned it over to Bruce McDonald. As many of you may know, Bruce spent a career in advertising, and one of the objectives in advertising is to entice people, attract people to buy into your ideas or your product. And so Bruce always came up with tantalizing names for his Summer Lecture Series programs. For example, in 2010, it was the Perilous Triangle, which was Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Iran. And the following year, it was Corruption, Persistent, Pervasive, Virulent. Bruce ran the program for 10 years, but had to step down in 2015 for health reasons. Tom Blinkhorn agreed to take over the program, but with one caveat. That was he would only do it for 1 year. So in 2016, John Ferries and I became the co-chairs of the Summer Lecture Series. John and I always said it took 2 people to replace any of our predecessors. Our first year with our committee, we came up with what was going to be a really great theme, the new medical frontier. We were sure that people in Osher would love to hear about the advances in medicine, the advances in healthcare delivery. And while the sessions were outstanding, the program was a disaster. We had the lowest attendance ever in the history of the Summer Lecture Series. So we conducted a survey at the end of the program to find out why. And the results can be summed up by this comment by one person who said, I spend half my life at doctor's office and in the hospital. Why do I want to spend another series of beautiful, glorious mornings in the summer hearing more about healthcare? Well, we recovered. In 2017, the theme was the global challenges confronting the United States. And we had the highest attendance ever recorded with Summer Lecture Series, and that record stands today. In 2019, we had the 250th anniversary of the founding of Dartmouth College, and we wanted to do something unique and a little different. So we came up with a debate formula. And while previous programs usually had one speaker or maybe 2 speakers speaking on the same issue in various aspects, in this debate formula, we wanted to have one speaker talk on one side of an issue and another one on the other side of the issue. And we used the First Amendment, the first 10 amendments for our basis. So we had a session on freedom of speech, one on freedom of press, one on gun rights. So with the 2 debaters, then we also had a separate moderator. And we thought that was well. And John and I stepped down at the end of 2019. The new team took over in 2020 with Ann Hargraves and Roland Kuchel. And they came up with a tremendous program for 2020 with all the sessions, all the speakers ready to go, and then the pandemic hit. So that program in its entirety with the same speakers has now moved to 2021. And we had a virtual Summer Lecture Series in 2020 looking at sessions from prior years. One of the hallmarks, and I'll leave you with this, about the Summer Lecture Series has been the ability of people recruiting speakers to get the best and the brightest experts in their fields from all over the country and all over the world. We've had people like Senator George Mitchell, former Secretary of Defense William Perry, Admiral James Stavridis, who was the Supreme Allied Commander in Europe, Susan Denser, a healthcare expert and former chair of the board of Dartmouth trustees. Thanks.
Hi, it's Lisa King, Program Manager for Osher at Dartmouth. So hard to believe it's been 30 years. I've started the program back in 1995. I took over from Beth Griffiths in little old Parker House. We had 30 courses running a term and about 600 members in a year. We were there in 1995, and then we moved to the DOC house for another 20 years in 1999. DOC house was a great building, great camaraderie, 2 classrooms for our members, and our offices were upstairs in the old part of the DOC house, which used to be a restaurant. And I was able and fortunate enough to work with Jill Newcity for 12 years. And then Sarah joined. So it was the 3 of us for a while. And then over the years, becoming a part of the Osher Institute and becoming an Osher program in 2014, our program was growing and we added to our staff. Laura joined us and Diane, and now I have a fabulous team of myself plus the 3, Sarah, Laura, and Diane. It's been a wonderful experience through many moves from Parker House to DOC House to 7 Lebanon Street, and now onto 1 Court Street, which we moved to in March of 2020, a week before we all started working from home due to the pandemic. I can't thank our members enough. It's been an amazing experience. I've been here with this program for 25 years, so most of it's life, and have met many members, worked with many study leaders. This program has enriched my life in so many ways, and I can't thank you enough, the members, the study leaders that I have worked with over the years. But more importantly, I may have been here since 1995, but it wasn't long after that when I had my great team and I built it and have had a wonderful staff to work with. And you should all be very proud of what we have accomplished, Laura, Sarah, and Diane. This anniversary is as much as a tribute to our members and our study leaders as it is our staff. Not being able to be a one-woman show, I couldn't have done it without you ladies by my side. So thank you so much. There's so many wonderful memories. It's hard to pick one. But I would say leaving the DOC house after 20 years was pretty emotional for me. Just it was a part of our history and where it pretty much started after Parker House, which was basically just a big walk-in closet that I had taken over as a full-time position from Beth Griffiths in 1995. And then we had wonderful space on 7 Lebanon Street, which we got accustomed to and was really great locale-wise. But the staff administrative offices were there and our classes were at DOC House. So after 30 years, it's been wonderful to finally, for the staff to be in one building with 4 classrooms. And then of course the pandemic hit. So we are really looking forward to being able to share our space with our members. We're really excited about it. And hopefully once we get through 2020 and on to 2021, we'll be able to open up our space in our new location and show our members. What makes this organization so special is you, the members, and our study leaders. It's amazing to be a part of this organization. Thank you everyone for your support. I really hope you enjoy this 30th anniversary video. It wasn't what we had anticipated, as we wanted to have a big celebration in our new home and our new offices. But I think it's really important that everyone stays safe and enjoy all the work that Sarah and Pam and the presenters have done to put this together. And just hoping that 2021 is better than 2020. Thank you all so much for continued support, and hope you continue to enjoy our programs that we have to offer. Thank you so much.
Welcome, Osher members, to this final session of our Osher at Dartmouth 30th anniversary celebration. I'm Bill Sullivan, current president of Osher at Dartmouth. With me today are John Sanders, the immediate past president, and Steve Toffel, who will become president in 2021. In this final session, we're going to focus on the future of Osher at Dartmouth. For 30 years, our very successful business model has been to promote a self-sustaining, lifelong learning program with classes attended by and taught by local members. All our classes took place in the immediate area. And this business model saw our organization progressively grow over the years from the original 38 members to 1,572 members and 217 course offerings by June of 2020. Our operating budget has grown to $500,000 annually. The COVID-19 pandemic has completely changed that business model. And today we find ourselves operating exclusively as a distant learning program, presenting all classes using the Zoom platform. And this has simultaneously caused some constriction in local membership, while at the same time allowing members from 20 US states and 3 foreign countries to join our program and to take courses via Zoom. At some point, the pandemic will be brought under control, and we will resume local in-person class offerings. Will we also continue to offer courses via Zoom? If so, how will this joint presentation of in-person and Zoom classes affect our business model of the last 30 years and of the coming 30 years? For answers to that question, I will turn to past President John Sanders and our upcoming President, Steve Toffel. John, what about this joining of the old and the new? Does it make sense for our program of lifelong learning?
I believe it very much does. I believe Zoom will allow Osher at Dartmouth to attract members and study leaders from well beyond our Upper Valley and related communities. I first became aware of Zoom 4 or 5 years ago when my brother began using it for a captaincy proficiency course he had created 10 years before. Because it is a 2-hour nightly course, 5 days a week for a month, many potential students shied away from taking it because of travel or other time commitments. When he included Zoom with his in-person class, enrollment nearly doubled. Class members could watch it from anywhere, and if needed, watch it later. They could easily review complex materials such as solar navigation the night before the Coast Guard exam. And when COVID-19 came along, he simply taught from home. I was interested in using Zoom for Osher's Great Decisions course, which has long suffered from over-enrollment. But inertia got in the way. Not until COVID-19 forced the college and all of us to migrate to Zoom for all instruction did we begin to see the relative ease of using it, as well as many advantages. We now have people taking Osher courses from 81 other states and countries, including France, Canada, and the United Arab Emirates. We have several people who have offered to teach classes for us who are no longer in the Upper Valley. Recruiting speakers on difficult subjects is no longer bound by geography. I see a future for Osher where members join from many parts of the country and indeed the world, where we use a hybrid teaching model that allows class members to be present in person and be joined by those who cannot be there, and where we can recruit leaders, lecturers, and study leaders from anywhere in the world.
John, thanks for those promising insights. Steve, what's your prognosis?
Well, I think where we go to from here is to look at where we were just before COVID shut us down for all in-person classes. We launched an ambitious underwriting program with Vermont and New Hampshire Public TV, and our goal at the time was to introduce ourselves to the more remote parts of the 2 states, parts where the driving distance alone was enough to discourage people from joining our classes. We knew that the technology existed for remote learning and hoped that platforms such as Zoom would enable us to expand our membership bases gradually. Few of us were intimately familiar with Zoom, but most of us had heard of it and felt that we could slowly integrate it into our program and allow people who were hungry for lifelong learning to participate. The pandemic changed that timetable completely, but like Winston Churchill, we were determined not to waste a good crisis. As Bill mentioned, we now have members in 22 states and 3 foreign countries. Our transition to virtual classes has allowed us to nearly return to our membership level prior to the COVID virus, and the percentage of students filling our available seats has actually increased. Think of what this will mean for our winter term alone. You'll be able to attend classes from home on a snowy day. If you're someplace warm, bring your computer and attend from there. And if the timing of the class doesn't fit your schedule, you can watch the recording of the class when it's convenient for you. Think of the potential for wider audience participation for the summer lecture series. Zoom will be an integral part of our future. We will return to in-person classes as soon as it's safe to do so, and when we do, Zoom will be there. We'll be able to enjoy the live in-person socialization of the classroom while sharing that experience with those who wish to experience it from afar. Yogi Berra once said, "Predictions are difficult, especially about the future." Well, I believe that we can see an incredibly exciting time for Osher in our future. And as they say about the future, stay tuned.
Thank you, John and Steve. Your experiences with the past and the present Osher business model and the insights that you've just given us tell us that Osher really does promise to have an expansive future, one with greater geographic reach, growth in membership, and a resulting increase in breadth in number of courses. It sounds like a very exciting 30 years for Osher. I won't be here in 30 years. Thank you all who are joining us today for this celebration. We all owe a special thanks to Pam Allen and Sarah Chamberlain and the team they have put together to make this happen. And now I just want to say, as a final goodbye today, here is a toast to Osher at Dartmouth for the past 30 years and the promising future 30 years. Cheers to all.
Cheers.
That concludes this program.